Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to today's event on the networking channel. We're going to have an event today called Integrating LLMs in Computer Networking Education. Can it be done? What are the challenges? It's going to be led by Vishal Misra, who's professor in the Department of Computer Science and Electrical Engineering at Columbia University. He's also the Vice Dean of Computing and AI in the School of Engineering. He is an ACM and IEEE fellow, and his research emphasis is on mathematical modeling of systems, bridging the gap between practice and analysis. He co-founded CricInfo, which was acquired by ESPN in 2007 and was one of the world's first commercial applications built on top of GPT-3. He has been awarded a Distinguished Alumnus Award by IIT Bombay and a Distinguished Young Alumnus Award by UMass Amherst College of Engineering. Before we start, we want to note that this is the talk for today, and we're going to have more talks. This is a talk series, and in 2 weeks, we're going to have our next event on evolving AI architectures in support of heterogeneous into next generation networks. So we hope you'll attend that as well. And with that, we're going to start the event for today. We think the panel will be more interesting if we can make it interactive. So please help us out by asking questions. Vishal, he'd love to hear your questions. You can do that via the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And if you like, you can enable closed captions. And there's an option at the bottom of your screen to translate our spoken words into other languages there as well. So with that, we'll turn things over to Vishal, who's going to give a kind of a short presentation, and then we can take questions.
Thanks, Matt, and Edmundo, thank you for inviting me here. So what I'll do is I'll start off with a short presentation that I had made on best practices for AI in education to the faculty in the School of Engineering at Columbia University late in fall, I think around November or December of last year. And so I'll use that to sort of give my perspective and my thoughts on broadly speaking, how we can integrate AI in education, Gen AI specifically. There is an example that's related to computer networking, and then we can take it from there. Does that sound good?
Perfect,
Okay.
Vishal. In fact, thank you very much for coming here. And we will interrupt you and ask questions for you as you go along also. That
Yes,
would be great.
Please feel free. Yeah, anytime. Okay. So I'm going to ask the most often asked question since 2020 is, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, so as I said, this is a talk that I gave by the School of Engineering in December of 2023, a few months ago, on best practices for AI in education. And it's a very short presentation. So the first thing is that, these technologies, Gen AI technologies, ChatGPT, Bard, or Gemini, DALL-E, they are here to stay. They exist. So what we need to do is we need to treat them as tools similar to, let's say, search engines. Conceptually, there are differences, but treat them that they are here to stay and incorporate them in teaching, assuming that students are going to use them. Well, one of the interesting things that people noticed was the usage of ChatGPT had gone down in summer, but it spiked up as soon as the US school year resumed. So you clearly know who's using ChatGPT. It's the students. And I don't think we will be able to ban people from using it, and we shouldn't. What we should think about is how do we use these things to improve on what people are learning and not sort of take away from what they should be learning. Now, part of that, here there are some recommendations for faculty and administration. Internally at Columbia, we have come up with a policy document since then. So one thing that we say is that every faculty should be explicit about Gen AI use in courses to ensure academic integrity and guide students in using Gen AI ethically. So no one should sort of pretend that it doesn't exist. You have to know that it exists and make a policy specifically for that upfront. And did my screen disappear?
Yes.
Oh,
It's
what do you see?
a green environment. And now, okay, now it came back.
Okay, yeah. My screen went to lock screen mode. And at that point, I said that administration should support faculty in adapting to Gen AI tools and ensure that, students have access to these Gen AI tools. Since then, at that time, it wasn't public that I was taking over as, this vice dean for computing and AI. So the second bullet actually was aimed at myself. I was talking to myself, and we are taking steps in that direction. Okay, so what I'm going to say today, uh, is in the first slide I said, some of this has been adapted from a Cornell University report on incorporating GI in teaching. So they had formed this committee which sort of thoughtfully looked across the spectrum on all the classes that are being taught and what is the best way of incorporating Gen AI in teaching. So some of what I speak about has been taken from there. So now let's start with the opportunities and benefits of using Gen AI. So there are many different things. You can have customized learning experiences. You can improve accessibility of the content for diverse student needs. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then we'll talk about use cases across various disciplines, not just, let's say, computer networking or CS, but also other disciplines, medicine, art, law, whatever. What are the risks? Well, the risks are, people can use these tools to circumvent learning and use them as a shortcut to sort of answer homework problems. Then there are issues of, there's a lot of talk about the biases that are inbuilt in these models based on the training data. There are some ethical concerns around these models. I'm sure they'll get sorted soon enough. And then there are talks about infringements on privacy and intellectual property. There's a very famous case going on right now where New York Times has sued OpenAI, claiming that they're infringing on the New York Times IP by incorporating the articles in the training data, which can sort of verbatim reproduce the articles if you give the right prompt. So first, let's talk about the benefits and customized learning experiences. So the idea of having a Gen AI or a chatbot tutor actually is very appealing. So there was a survey done of about 3,000 high school and college students by this organization called Intelligent, fairly high sample size. And it found that 85% of the students preferred ChatGPT to studying with a tutor, especially for STEM classes. And, those of us who do teach in the classroom can sort of understand that. When you ask questions, very few people raise their hands to answer, even if they know the answer. Or they don't ask questions. When you ask, is it clear? Do you have any questions? Very few people will say anything because students are often shy or uncomfortable asking questions publicly. They might think that they might be showing their ignorance by asking this question. And as educators, we know that no, it's not about ignorance. You please ask questions. If something is not getting through, that's our fault. So please ask questions. So students are shy, we know that, but they are comfortable asking a chatbot these questions. So I think having a chatbot which is dedicated or sort of tuned to your course content can help significantly in improving what the students learn. So now there are, these chatbots have this problem of hallucination. We all know that. People are developing specialized chatbots for tutors that can remove hallucinations. I think University of Michigan has an effort. We internally at Columbia are developing something similar to that. I think these would be very useful. Now, chatting with PDF has become all too common and easy. There are so many different sites available where you just simply upload a PDF, even ChatGPT. You upload a PDF and you can ask questions, and students are able to interact with PDF versions of schools of textbooks or papers. That's become very easy. There are some risks associated with that, and we have to be careful. But it has become really easy. Now, the use of Gen AI in writing and creative fields and social sciences is slightly different. What the recommendations or thoughts around these are that for writing skills, Gen AI should assist in writing, but should not be replacing your writing skills. You don't want to undermine sort of core writing skills and academic integrity. You can use Gen AI for brainstorming, for idea generation, even for looking through. We all use tools like Grammarly. But there is something about writing and co-writing skills that needs to be taught, and Gen AI should not be replacing that. Similarly, for other creative fields in art, music, literature, these tools should be used for creative brainstorming and creation with a focus on ethical attribution. So if you use a Gen AI tool to create a picture or a piece of music, you should attribute it. So learning to attribute these tools is very important. And in social sciences, broadly speaking, you can use these tools often for data wrangling and analysis. But again, you have to maintain academic integrity and make sure that the learning objectives do not suffer. You have to make sure that people learn more as a result of these tools and not less. Now, use of Gen AI in our field in STEM. So in STEM fields, the focus should be that these tools should aid in explanatory roles and data analysis, but should be used with an understanding of what the limitations are, how they can hallucinate, what mistakes they can make. Programming, GAI can assist in programming education, but it should not replace the learning of essential coding skills. So use Gen AI as tutor, but not a creator of codes. And it depends on different courses. For instance, here, at Columbia, we have a course on SQL, database course. So there you should make it explicit that you should not be writing your SQL code by using a chatbot. But if you have to create, let's say, a Python Flask server, where you have a website where you input your SQL queries and you get the output and print and all that, okay, that sort of infrastructure code, you can use GAI to create that code. But for this class, where the core learning skill is on SQL, please do not use GAI, right? So for other stuff you can use, but core learning skills should not be replaced. And where it can help us in using these tools is very useful for developing course content. The first draft for a course structure, syllabus, lecture structure, examples, figures, and diagrams. I've personally used Gen AI for that, and it's extremely useful. Often we have this block, this inertia of getting started for anything. And these tools can help you get started. So that's very useful. But GAI should not be used for two things. It should never be used for grading. And it should never be used to detect GAI use in assignments, because these tools which claim to detect that this is written by ChatGPT or others, they are not reliable at all. And you can get into sort of serious problems if you use these things to detect cheating using GAI. We all know that, you can use ChatGPT to write something in the style of Shakespeare, let's say. So it's so easy for somebody to create an answer using, let's say, ChatGPT and make it get another pass through it. Okay, change the style of writing. And then all your detectors that you have developed fail. So that's an absolute no-no. Do not use any tool to detect GAI because it's a hopeless, impossible task. And you shouldn't be using GAI for grading unless it's very sort of objective. Like if it's a yes, no, true, false, or multiple choice, okay, maybe some of these tools can help, but not for subjective grading. So we should use allow use of GenAI on assignments with sort of express permission by the faculty member. And now I'll talk about developing course content. So homework problems, all of us who teach, we're constantly trying to come up with new homework problems. So here I'll give you an example. So I teach essentially the two main classes that I teach at Columbia. One is the Intro to Networking, the Kuruza Ross book. And the other is a course on modeling and performance evaluation and queuing theory. So here I'm showing you on the screen a homework problem that I created in spring of 2020. If you remember spring of 2020, we were living in a very different world then. And just to sort of get people interested in it, I created this problem about ventilator usage. Can you hear the ambulance in the background? No? Okay. But if you remember spring 2020, New York City, the sound of ambulance was constant. We were the ones which were hit the first. I was actually an early adopter. I got COVID before the city went into lockdown in March of 2020. And, at that time, people had no idea what it was going to do. People are deathly afraid. And ventilators were a big thing that, that was a way to sort of help people. And so I created this problem about a queuing theory problem of, how many ventilators do you need to match the demand of patients coming in? Now, if I give the same problem today to the students, they'll have no idea what it's all about, right? It's not relevant anymore. I mean, they might have some idea. So what I did was I pasted this homework problem on ChatGPT and said, create a homework problem similar to this one in different setting. Just this, a homework problem that I'd already created. I said, okay, now create a problem similar to this. And instantly I got this new homework problem about a car rental agency, which has a request of car comings and, this is the average rental duration, number of cars. Sort of mathematical tools that are required are exactly the same, but now it's in a different sort of setting. So you can use these tools to sort of expand your set of homework problems where you're testing the same concepts, but maybe the homework problems that I've given, the solutions exist on some, website somewhere, or people have shared, and you don't want people to simply copy the solutions. You want them to understand the concepts. And for that, this is a great tool. If you already have a sort of a set of homework problems, you can expand your bank of homework problems, but by asking these tools to create more. But again, here you have to be careful. So I did it with this homework problem, and I asked it to create another one, and it did. And it looked very believable. But when I actually went down and solved it, it was actually an unstable system. So you have to be careful when you use these tools. Okay, they're helpful, but as one former president said, trust but verify. Now, on that theme, for the networking class, my computer networking class, I gave this problem where I took a previous homework assignment that I had given in the previous version of the class. I gave it to ChatGPT to solve. ChatGPT wrote down the solution. The solution looked extremely believable and seemed almost correct, but there were mistakes in it. So what I did for the class was, I gave the whole thing to the class. The homework problem that I'd given ChatGPT and ChatGPT's solution, and I asked the class to identify what mistakes were made by ChatGPT in the answer. So that does two things. It makes them sort of critically analyze a solution, really understand the concept to figure out, okay, there's something wrong in the solution. Secondly, it kind of implicitly teaches them that you cannot trust these tools. They will make mistakes. And once that sort of they internalize that, then they'll kind of stop using them to generate answers. Or at least simply generate answers and copy and paste them. even if they use them to sort of generate answer, they'll have to verify and make sure that it's not right. So this is one sort of tool or trick that I think I encourage everyone to use. Give ChatGPT a question, let it generate answer. Often it'll generate an incorrect answer. Give the whole thing to your students. Ask them to identify what's wrong. So, the final thoughts, what I have here, there are three sort of ways to use Gen AI. Ban Gen AI when it replaces core learning or sort of disrupts foundational skill development. Like, in a database class, ban it for writing SQL, but you can use it to create a Flask server. You can permit GAI with proper credit for enhancing higher order thinking and skill growth. So if people use Gen AI for sort of brainstorming, you can permit that as long as they attribute it. And in some cases, you should actually advocate the use of Gen AI to promote exploration, to think of new ideas for creativity. So these are sort of the three levels of the usage of Gen AI. One is ban, second is permit with attribution, third is actually actively encourage people to use. So with that, I'll stop with my presentation, and then now I'll cede the floor to you, and you can ask questions, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you very much, Vishal. In fact, you answered the first two questions that we had to you. So you clearly advocate the use of ChatGPT, encourage the use and with care. So emphasizing criticism for student criticism and faculty criticism to whatever answers it gives. I just like, before you go to questions from the audience, so you can ask questions, please do. And we, in the beginning of the lecture, Matt showed a poll, so we'll give you 3 minutes to fill up the poll, so you hope you can finish it. And perhaps we can proceed by another question from the audience. Do you have several? Otherwise, I have several questions here that we can pinpoint. In fact, you already, why, Matt, if you have someone ready, you can come in. Otherwise, you ask a question. Do you have some?
There is a question from the audience. Let's see.
Okay,
So
great.
The question is, Vishal, what do you think should be the line in terms of using AI for core skills in courses? Do you think it should be okay to use GAI in courses that are not focused on teaching those core skills? For example, students are usually not allowed to use calculators up until high school, but are allowed to do so in college. Maybe because at that point we assume that they have acquired the core skills of mental math. Should we do the same thing for GAI?
Yeah. As I said, these tools exist. You cannot stop people from using them. So, if it's unrelated to the core skill, you can encourage the use of these tools with sort of two caveats. They should always attribute that they're using these tools. Secondly, you should be aware of the limitations of these tools. When ChatGPT came out, and I had been using these language models for a couple of years before that. And when it came out, and people were all sort of excited about it, I said, think of these tools as the most knowledgeable and helpful entity that you'll ever encounter, but with early onset dementia. So you really have to be careful in believing what they say. They confidently hallucinate, and they can say things that are not true. So you have to verify. So they can point in the right direction, but then it's up to you to really verify what they say, what they claim. Is it correct or not? So be aware
Vishal,
of the limitations and attribute. Yeah.
I'm curious. Do you have a class or maybe a small lecture to students at Columbia, let's say, to tell all the benefits and the bad side of generative AI to students, so that you have, I mean, not a full class, but regular lectures that you to students. Do you have that at Columbia, or do you plan to have that?
We plan to have that.
Okay.
So we plan to have a series of sort of teach-ins, workshops, and we have formulated a policy document for different educators, so that we also hope that it's distributed in every class. People can say a few words about what the limits and capabilities of these tools are.
Mhm. So thank you very much. Do you have enough, Matt, with the polls? Do you have enough people filling the polls? Do you think it's ready to?
Yeah, I think so. Stavrola, are you able to show the poll? Do we have enough data? Thanks to
So
everybody for filling that out. Stavrola's gonna try pulling that up. While Stavrola is releasing those results, there's another set of questions
yeah,
around
Mhm.
data. Do you personally have any observations, Vishal, on how this affects student learning, how it affects their development of kind of soft skills, or
so
does,
yeah, in terms of student learning, I think it's definitely helpful. In fact, there was I'll find that link and I'll paste it here. There was a class that was done in at Johns Hopkins last year. It was a systems class, but it was on sort of finding bugs in system code. And they said we are going to use ChatGPT from day one. And what the instructors observed was the students were a lot more prepared, and they could sort of ask the mundane questions to the chatbot. So the question they were shy about asking the instructors or the TAs, they could just get it out of the way, uh, ask the chatbot and increase their understanding to the level of other students in the class. So it actually not only helped in their learning, in terms of soft skills, it also gave them more confidence to now ask, more meaningful questions. So my, you know, these are early days for these tools, but my somewhat limited experience is that actually it does help soft skills as well, because students become a lot more confident and conversant with the material, and then they can participate more in the class. And I see another question related to that. What do you think about the use of specialized LLMs trained as TAs? I think it's a very good idea. You have to make sure that they do not hallucinate. And also, we have to make sure that they act as TAs in the sense that they guide you towards the answer, but do not give you the answer right away.
Uh,
So,
and
there's
Vishal,
work going on to make sure that these chatbots do that. And I think it's a great idea.
yes, totally. I would like to follow up on that. For a specific class, like you said, you teach network and modeling, but for a specific class in any area, does Columbia has any policy, or do you plan to match with perhaps startups or company that do this training, specialized training, like Camigo is doing another place to be for other classes? Do you think it's a good idea to do this specialized? Is it possible to do that partnership with some company, or have you any thoughts?
So we haven't explored partnering with any company so far, but we
Mhm.
are developing our own solution in-house,
Oh, you are, okay.
where, instructors can upload their content, course content, let's say slides or lecture notes or textbook. And that's basically what the instructors have to do. And then we sort of automatically develop a custom chatbot trained on that material to answer questions. So we have,
Perfect.
early versions of it. Over the summer, we'll be piloting it with some summer classes, and hopefully in fall we can go wider. I'm not aware of any commercial offerings in that direction, but you mentioned something.
Uh,
I can take a
I
look
guess.
at.
Okay, we can type. In fact, do you it's a follow-up question, just we are in a formal chat here. Do you plan to the technology to develop that? I know we plan to open it up for other universities, or do you partnership with other universities to do that, or you do just in-house, very specialized, and keep for you, for Colombia?
No, I think we will open it up. It's a university. It's open.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we're not a commercial entity.
That's great. Matt, do
Yeah, we're still trying to pull up the poll results. There's another question from the audience around search engines. Do you know the history of when search engines came around? Did that affect how we taught courses, and are there lessons we can learn about how people dealt with search engines and kind of networking education? I don't know if you have any recollections of what happened back then.
So I'm old, but not that old. So I never taught pre-search engines. So not that you're old, Edmundo, but maybe you are in a better position to answer that.
Well, it's gonna affect definitely the way we search. Definitely. If you want a personal evaluation, I hate using now regular search engines. I prefer to start with something specialized to ask general question, and then I looked for the correct answer. But anyway, that's the it's gonna change definitely, but it's similar. Perhaps there's some flavor with it.
But did teaching change because of the advent of, let's say, Google?
It changed the way we went to the library, definitely. You don't see students going to the library anymore. So it definitely changed the way we search for, as students, we search for material. It definitely changed completely. So we have the same thing here, yes.
So I see two more questions.
Yeah.
One is do's and don'ts for ethical attribution. Well, when you're submitting your assignment, state clearly, okay, I use ChatGPT or Bard or Gemini or whatever to do this.
Mhm. Mhm. And
And there's another question. Do you think the use of GAI will reduce textbook reading? It's a difficult question, maybe. So
yeah, that's a pity.
that's something that people need to sort of think and come up with creative solutions that, people shouldn't just use these tools to summarize things.
Mhm, mhm.
Textbooks are written for a reason. And yeah.
And I have a question for you. There was a panel last year in ACM about programming. And the answer that since ChatGPT did, they had an experiment with major universities in the US, and ChatGPT was pretty good in solving all the, I mean, a large percentage of homework assignments. That is okay for coding. It's not, it has errors for networking, as you pointed it out. But do you think we have to change the way we teach because of those tools? So, and how to do that with faculty? So that two questions here. It's gonna change the way we teach. That was the conclusions of that panel. They have to change the way they teach programming. And since networking also has some programming to it, we have to change the way we teach.
So I think, yes, we will have to change the way we teach. People are going to be using these tools, like Copilot and others to do coding. The flip side of that is that, these tools are only as good as the training data, right? So we should be careful that we do not sort of stagnate in terms of, let's say, new programming languages or new ideas. Because these tools are extremely good, they've been trained on a ton of Python code. That shouldn't make everyone just use Python because it's easier for Copilot to write in Python. So we should be careful that, we do not sort of hurt progress that way. And things don't become ossified because, you have this tool which helps you write in a particular way to solve a certain class of problems. So we have to be careful about that.
Matt, do you?
Yeah, sorry, we're still trying to pull up the poll. Let's see. Do you have any recommendations for any further recommendations for what students can do to kind of improve their robustness to wrong answers? Are there specific prompts you would suggest to any kinds of prompt engineering, or how can they think critically about the results that ChatGPT gives?
So I'm trying to understand the question. Should we think critically about generating wrong answers, or
maybe it's about if a student gets an answer from ChatGPT, how can they figure out if it's correct or not? Are there any tricks, or do they just have to think?
There's no trick other than knowing the subject. See, that's the best thing, that you're unsure whether the answer is right or not. So unless you know the subject, you cannot verify.
Exactly. In fact, that's a very good point for your students. If you don't know the answer, you cannot verify, and that's that we have to teach our students about that. And Matt,
I
if
see
the
another.
yeah,
Sorry.
okay,
I see another question from Eric.
yeah.
Eric TM. He says, how much do you predict the future of these tools? How long is your advice good for? Well, I'm not an expert, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. I think Matt probably got that joke. There used to be an ad series, but anyway. I don't know how long. Some of these principles will stay forever. But these tools are getting better. But, the current wave of LLM architecture is this whole idea of predict the next token. So that architecture, I think, as long as that architecture is dominant, whatever I've said today will hold true in terms of, occasionally hallucinating, the need to trust the answer, verify the answer. When we have the next leap. So I don't think these tools right now are anywhere close to AGI, artificial general intelligence. When that comes, we'll cross that bridge when it comes. But for now, I think the principles that I outlined, I think they should hold good for some time to come.
There is one question here that about online courses, and I probably Columbia teach online courses as well. That is much more difficult to check solutions from students and things like that. So do you have any thoughts about that, about the online courses?
Can you repeat the question?
It's from the audience. It's very difficult to monitor for online courses. Since you have any policy at Columbia what to do about online course if Columbia teach some of the this course online, or because it's difficult. That it's more like observation from the audience that is here. So I'm following up with.
So again, whenever a question like this comes up, think what is your policy towards Google? And you should have something similar here, that this is a tool that exists, people can access it. Difference is, the kind of unreliability of these tools. So think what you would do if you change your question and instead of GenAI, you put Google or search engine there. And have that kind of a similar policy.
Do you have the results of the polls, Matt, or it's difficult to show? Because that would be nice to. Aha. Occasionally. It's a high percentage of people still.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry. We have the results except for number three. That number three, we have to close the poll to get those results. So if you haven't filled out the poll yet, you can still do that. But this is the first question. Have you already used ChatGPT or similar chatbots to solve networking problems and assignments for classes? There's a spread of answers. More people said yes than no. Some people tried and stopped using it. So that's kind of the results for question one. And then question two, if you use ChatGPT for your classes, how did you use it? Did you use it for homework problems, class projects, networking projects, creating assignment materials? A number of you said creating assignment materials, more than half. So that's interesting. And then question four, if you're a student and you use ChatGPT to help in your computer networking classwork, how well did it work? And nobody said well. No, the most common answer was it could solve some of the problems well. But nobody said it could not solve any of them well. So that was interesting. And the rest of you are probably faculty or people who don't use it for that purpose. And then question five, if you are a student and you use ChatGPT in your networking classwork, how much help did you request of it? 12% of you said use it to do most of the work for you. But most people said they only use it to double check their work. And then question six, have LLMs been helpful for you? The majority of you said only partially. Many of you said yes, though, and only a few people said no. So that's kind of the spread. We'll work on getting the answers to question three up soon. Thank you.
Yes, it's interesting that 41% have said yes, helpful for networking classes. Any comments, Vishal, with those results?
So yeah, actually the 41% is striking. I'm curious if anyone can type how it has been helpful. So at least with my students, they use it mainly for data wrangling, data analysis, not to sort of generate new research ideas. One thing actually personally is very useful for me. Writing papers has become so much easier. I'll give you a simple example. When we write papers or when we write research proposals, references and BibTeX, that takes up a lot of time. Now it has become so easy. What I do is I take a PDF, I go to the references section, I just cut and paste the text of a reference, dump it to ChatGPT, say, give me the BibTeX. Out pops the BibTeX. Goes into my .bib file. It has also helped me make diagrams and make figures in, LaTeX has this thing called TXZ, which allows you to draw figures. And personally, what I've done recently, I wrote a paper where I simply gave instructions to ChatGPT that I want this block to connect to this, and I want this, and I want a dash line and on this. Give me the TXZ code, and out pop the code. So for things like that, not the core research idea, but helping in the process of writing papers or things like that, it has helped.
Yeah, except even for Markov chains, I had trouble with generating Markov chains in the with ChatGPT for figures. Have you tried that?
I have tried, and actually, I'll tell you, it actually worked quite well.
Okay. For figures, no, but for programming, perfect. That was pretty nice. Okay, that's interesting. There is Matt. There is another question you'd like to.
Yeah, sorry. Let's see. Which one is it in the Q&A?
Okay.
Yeah, maybe you could take it. Yeah.
where it shifted my okay. What principles, approach, and actions would advise to fix a wrong answer or hallucinate with ChatGPT? Some creation, an LLM for your own use. How could we, or what would be the approach to do that?
So I think I've addressed most of these questions, except the last one by Mubashir Anwar. Have you noticed some harmful effects of the usage of LLMs for courses by students? For example, have misunderstandings developed among students as a result of hallucinations? So I have, in my classes so far, in I guess the Chat GPT era, I have taught 2 classes. I have not observed a whole lot of that. But in my other interactions, I've noticed some people trust these tools too much. And we need to constantly remind them, no, don't do that. They're extremely helpful, but you should know, just because you can use it doesn't mean you know how to use it or when to use it. So you should learn when and how to use them. So I have seen not in my classes, but in other classes, some people are very, I would say, impressionable. And they think that, we have achieved AGI and these things know everything. No, they don't.
Then students have to be constantly reminded about that. That's the question. So we do have to have it. I have a follow-up question. Would be industry is using LLMs in their work environment. So for specifically computer networks, since you teach also computer networks, do you think we need to change anything to adapt to usage in industry or not? Or whatever you have should be okay?
So when you say industry is using them, they're using primarily for coding.
Coding, yeah, okay.
But just because they're using it for coding, it doesn't mean that their processes have changed of, code reviews and people looking through the code. I think that still is primarily the same industry. Maybe it has sped up the productivity. There are lots of studies, some of them should be taken with a grain of salt, because it's coming from the people who have built COPPE and things like that, that it has increased the productivity of software engineers so much. But I don't think any of it has fundamentally changed the process of software development. It might have improved things. And if people believe that you can have an agent where you just tell the agent, okay, I want this built, and the agent will go ahead and build it bug-free for you, then there's a bridge in New York City that I would like to sell to you, because we're not there yet.
Matt, do you like to ask a question?
See, we got the results for question number 3. This was the free-form question where we were asking you, if you use LLMs for education or homework or things like that, what kind of specific shortcomings did you notice? So several of you mentioned getting the specifics right seems to be a challenge. Giving generally incorrect answers seems to be an issue. Hallucination was mentioned. Misunderstanding concepts. It was mentioned it's good in providing references to things. So if you're looking, you want to know where to read more. But generally, it seems like it's kind of good at general knowledge, but getting kind of specific, more nuanced, or more kind of niche or esoteric sorts of information seems a little bit harder.
And
So except for the first bullet, I agree with maybe first and the sixth one, which I said no. I think, or the one I said no when they don't use LLMs. But the first one, it says I don't find any. I think you have to temper your expectations there. There are lots of shortcomings, and the other answers actually they do a great job of identifying what the shortcomings are.
And Vishal, the ChatGPT 4 or other paid versions of those tools are much better than the free versions. So that creates a gap between those who can pay and those who cannot pay. What do you do in Colombia today about that? If you do anything, do you plan to offer for all students the better version, or each one pays from their pocket?
So no, we are trying to negotiate maybe a site license. We'll see how that goes. If it's reasonably priced, maybe we'll go with that. But again, if I think from an educator's point of view, we should not require the use of, these pro LLM tools.
And
But we should
yeah,
assume
go
that
ahead.
at least the basic free version is available to the students, and design our strategy around that.
And now, since this is being listened for people all over the world, is just your opinion that I like. Do you think it would improve countries that do not have good access to education or limited access to education? Do you think that those tools can improve it, or make the gap even bigger?
No, I think because some of these tools are free, I think it'll improve. It'll reduce the gap. Especially, things like, these tutors, which are custom trained for particular subjects, they become more widely available, either free or at a reasonable cost. I think that's going to go a long way in closing the gap, and it will sort of promote equity. That's my personal opinion.
Sure. Matt?
There's a question about the how ChatGPT would affect course design. Do you foresee it harming course design at all? Could instructors misuse ChatGPT when creating questions, and could that have negative effects on students in the class?
I don't see how instructors can misuse. I see it sort of only enhance course design. I mean, you have to be careful. Again, the example that I showed, that when I asked it to create more homework problems, it created several versions, but some of them, it created an unstable system. So you have to be careful when you when you use them to enhance course content, whether the content is correct or not. So in terms of misusing, yeah, where things can go wrong is if you're not carefully using it as an instructor. So that's on you. But I don't know of a specific misuse. I think it can only help.
Matt, if you have another, I have another question. If you have another, please ask from the audience.
Oh, go ahead, Edmundo. Yeah.
Okay. For computer networks, again, several questions rely on pictures to our questions in book, like say connection of networks, etc. Have you tried that to change those questions or interpret the questions that have pictures in it?
No,
For computer networks specifically.
I tried once with the multimodal model of both ChatGPT and Bard, but it kind of did not understand. It failed miserably in interpreting the figure. Maybe as it improves, I can revisit, but this was a few months ago and it didn't really work well.
Okay.
That's just like a one-off. So I cannot
Sure.
claim something with, yeah.
Interesting. And you mentioned for grading, at least rough grading. I've seen a paper recently that they are trying to do that. Do you think it's possible? You comment something like that, but do you think would be possible for at least give an idea of the grading for a homework or exam?
I don't recommend unless it's very objective, right?
Uh-huh.
If it's true, false, or multiple choice, or things like that, where there's a single precise answer. Okay. But for things where you are asking an analysis or more subjective kind of answers, I don't think these tools are ready yet. They might do a good job in several cases, but then you don't know when they'll fail. So you have to verify that anyway. So my personal advice would be not to venture there right now in terms of trading. Do not do that.
Mhm. Matt, do you have-
There's a question about hallucinations more specifically. Do you have examples of hallucinations affecting students? Do you or have you seen misunderstandings develop among students as a result of hallucinations, or could you see that sort of thing happening? Do you have any thoughts along
But
those lines?
so I addressed that a few minutes ago. So I have not seen that in my class explicitly, but then I have a very small sample set, 2 classes taught in this era. But I've seen people trust these tools way too much. And so misunderstandings can develop if they trust these tools more than they should. You know, do not go into the marketing hype. These tools are extremely good, but they make mistakes.
and, uh, y- you see any question? Because I'd like to ask another one
Yeah, go
there.
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, okay. You talked about textbook reading if affect the book. For paper reading, there are tools, specialized tools that can summarize the paper answer point. I like your opinion about that. In the past, I say we read the full paper and break your your keep reading that. That may affect the way you read papers. I am not sure in a good way or bad way. I'd like to hear some text for papers, not
Yeah.
for.
So I again, like you, I'm not sure if it will affect it in a good way or bad way. It's helpful to create summaries, but it should not replace our paper reading experience. We should make sure that it augments and helps us read a paper in a better way. Because some papers are written in a very sort of difficult to read way, and if we can use these tools to create sort of a path on how to read this paper, what the main results are, what different sections say, then we can go and look for that in that paper. But do not replace reading of a paper by just using a summary created by these tools. You use it as a guide to read the paper. I think that would be my advice.
And
I think there's a question by an anonymous attendee. What do you
uh-huh.
expect the result of the following experiment if you offer the same problem to 2 students, one uses ChatGPT, one doesn't? Well, it depends on what question or what problem you give them.
and and perhaps a final overall question since you are getting near the end. In terms of computer networks, what do you think? I know it's very difficult to say, but your opinion about the future concerning that use it for just for computer networks and modeling classes, those classes that you teach. You mentioned specialized tools. Would that become available soon, or you take some
I think,
time?
yeah, they should become available soon, sort of specialized tutors. And generating question banks, I think these tools can be very helpful there. So creating variants of an existing homework problem so that you make sure that you test the understanding of students and they just don't cut and paste an answer that exists somewhere on the web. I think they'll be very helpful for that. Yeah.
So, math? Should
Yeah,
we?
so I think we can end with that. We want to thank Vishal very much for his insights and putting together such an interesting event and giving such great answers to these questions. Very educational for all of us. Um, We're gonna have a recording of the session put up on YouTube if you'd like to review it. It's gonna be linked off our main website. And we want the conversation to continue. There's a link to join the Slack workspace where you can ask further questions of Vishal. He'd love to keep interacting with you. So please join in message if you have further questions. And please join us for our next event in 2 weeks on the topic of evolving AI architectures in support of heterogeneous end-to-end next generation networks. So thank you very much, everybody, and Vishal.
Thank you.
And
Thanks.
thank you, Vishal. And I have a final sort. If you have policies from Colombia or anything material that you are available, if you want to share with everyone, that will be great. That you have
I'll
material
send
that
I'll
you can
send
share.
the material to you. Okay, sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.